Welcome to the IB DP Extended Essay Cafe. My name is Sarah, and like you, I'm an IB educator. I've been teaching DP for 20 years with a focus on TOK, history, and global politics. As we wait for others to join us, we'd love to know where you're joining us from. Please put down your name and city in the chat box. So we have Emily from the UK. Hi, Emily. We attended your session in the morning. It was great. Ciao from Malaysia. Okay. Ishwar from India. Jigs from Indonesia. Vimlan from Malaysia. Hello. Maria from the Philippines. Hi, everyone. Glad to have you here. Okay. Toddle is currently used by over 25,000 educators across 1,100 PYP and MYP schools. We have schools from all over the world, the US, Asia Pacific, Europe, and the Middle East. The program is also available in Spanish. Just like Toddle for PYP and MYP, Toddle for DP will be a curriculum planning and a comprehensive end-to-end teaching and learning solution. The platform will include features such as curriculum planning, resource library, DP core modules, assessment and feedback, progress reports, and student portfolios, among many, such as family communications, classroom management, and streamlined authorization and evaluation visits. We're doing a quick walkthrough to show you the DP extended essay module at 1:30 GMT today. I'm dropping the link in the chat box for everyone if you're interested. Okay. Right. Okay. Now, let me walk you through some quick housekeeping points. We request you, now you can switch on or off your videos, but please do put yourself on mute. If you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box and we'll get to those later. At various times, Jake will ask you to pause and reflect, use the chat feature to interact or as per his instructions. While typing into the chat box, please select everyone. This meeting has been developed independently from and is not endorsed by the IB. We thank Jake for generously sharing his learnings at Toddle's EE Cafe. Finally, don't forget to share your learnings from this session using the hashtag DPEECafe and tag Toddle across social media. So I'm just sharing with you the handle so that you can use it later on. 1 minute, please. Here we go. Yep. Now on to today's agenda. In today's session, we'll be exploring details pertaining to the Math IA extended essay with our speaker, Jake. Jake Fisher is an MYP and DP math educator and has taught in the United States and Spain for 8 years. He's currently teaching at the American School of Bilbao and is a moderator for Applications and Interpretation Mathematics Internal Assessment. Jake has found the Application and Interpretation course to be a unique opportunity for teachers to incorporate the areas of mathematics they love the most into a rigorous yet approachable curriculum. Through his experience in the IB, he hopes to be able to share resources and thoughts that can make this divergent mathematics course a rewarding experience for other teachers. We're so happy to have you here with us, Jake. Over to you.
All right, thank you for the introduction. I'm really happy to be here and looking forward to getting to know you all a little bit more and being able to share some positive experiences here. I would like to kind of reemphasize the fact that I am teaching from the perspective of an AI teacher, applications interpretation. I'm always going to call it probably AI. So just to not overwhelm you all with acronyms, but the parallel analysis and approaches course and AI both pertain to the mathematics extended essay and are basically a fluid grouping of the mathematics altogether that fall under the mathematics extended essay. So we just got to keep that in mind as we're going throughout today. I'm speaking through the applications and interpretation perspective. I am familiar with the analysis and approaches course, but everything kind of comes together for the extended essay and for mathematics, and I'll get into explaining that more. All right. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yeah, it's good.
All right, excellent. So, yeah, I would first like to get to know a little bit about you all. So please click the form that's been posted into the chat box and fill it out. It's just a few questions to give me a little bit of your background so that we can use that to better inform our discussion today. Okay. Let me go ahead and adjust the conditions on that. Thank you, Murat. All right. I'm having a little bit of a loading issue on my end here. We're going to go ahead and jump on to the next part, and I'll put that link then, I think, later back in the chat box once we have that permission adjusted. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Today, as we go throughout the session, if you have any questions that you would like me to address, please go ahead and access the Padlet that has been posted into the chat bar right now, and go ahead and leave any questions that you have throughout there. I'll try to reach those questions at various points throughout the session, and if we have extra time at the end, I'll make sure to answer any lingering ones. We have 3 activities. If time allows, we're going to try to get through all 3. We might only be able to do 2. There's a lot of exemplars for you all to look at in the exemplars bar, in addition to other resources. So please make sure that you have access to that Padlet and keep it open throughout the session, because it'll be where you can access most of your resources that I'll be referring to. And you have the link there in the chat bar. So our learning objectives, kind of working from the inside out. We got to go through the basics, understanding the basics of what ideas are the foundation of the extended essay, the topics that we can use to branch out and explore the mathematics extended essay, again, with an applications and interpretation focus. Then how we get into researching and developing the research question that students will be using, and then the methodologies for moving into the creation of that extended essay. And then finally, kind of how that is assessed, both in our own understanding of that assessment, and then understanding how the IB is going to eventually give at the end of the course the overall assessment grade for your student on the extended essay. So a quick note about the nature of the extended essay. We kind of got an unfortunate breakdown. The truth is, most IB students, they don't choose the mathematics extended essay. We might love the subject ourselves, but a lot of students don't fall in love with it and don't share that passion. However, there is a silver lining to this. And if you are looking to convince students at your school to join the mathematics extended essay, I'll give you a tip on how to do it. We had this issue at my school. A couple years ago, we only had 2 students doing mathematics extended essays out of 30 students that we had in our DP1 program. And then this year, we are now up to about 25% of the entire cohort is choosing to take on the mathematics extended essay because it's taken some convincing, but they've bought into the arguments and are actually having a lot of success on the mathematics extended essays. And the main reason is this. If you look at how the IB grades the extended essay, going from A down to non-graded, the mathematics extended essay has a proportionately higher level of success for students. You're looking at both A's and B's taking up over 50% of the overall marks that are of the overall grades given to the mathematics extended essays. Again, we can talk about sample size, the types of students that are going into the mathematics extended essay. But if you are looking to try to convince your students to, hey, take this on, especially if you're the type of student that's trying to achieve an AB on the extended essay, it's a quick little argument you can give them to kind of convince them and get them to buy into jumping into the mathematics extended essays. And at our school, we have seen this similar proportionate success. No student has gotten below a C on the mathematics extended essay, and these tend to we're seeing these statistics play out in our own little sample size. So I want you all to give me a little bit of your own perspective on what the mathematics extended essay with an applications and interpretation focus is. But first off, just kind of talking about it from the general perspective of mathematics. So if you click that link that's posted in the chat bar, it'll take you to a voting on Mentimeter. And I just want you to put in a word that describes a mathematics extended essay. And you can put up to 3 words. Right. Real quick onto my own presentation so we can analyze our own results. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for 1 second while I log in. All right, I'm seeing some really good ideas. Research, critical thinking, logical approach, problem solving, universe, proving difficult. Okay. The most common theme throughout it all, of course, the word that's proving to be a bit the bigger one is research and critical thinking and proof. So a lot of this, a lot of good ideas here. I want you all to kind of orient your focus now, though, more specifically toward the applications and interpretation course. At this point, it should take you to the second question. Can you all let me know if you have access to that second question? Okay. All right, now I'm seeing some more answers on that second question. Technology, modeling. All right. And now I'm going to go back and share the screen again. All right, so let's compare our results. So we can see that a lot of the focus of the mathematics extended essay is based around research and critical thinking. Absolutely. That analysis is also traditionally the focus of the mathematics extended essay. However, now that we can broaden our perspective and think about it through the applications and interpretation course, a lot of it does branch into these ideas of modeling. I like that that's put in there. A lot of statistical interpretation and the use of technology. Excellent. Now, this is not to say, again, that your students, just because they're in the applications and interpretation course, that they have to do the extended essay with an applications and interpretation focus, because it's not the applications and interpretation extended essay, it's the mathematics extended essay. So all of your students, if they're in your AI class, could do an extended essay in mathematics and not touch on mathematics that is specifically covered in their course, and actually be talking about things that are covered in the opposite course. There's no restrictions upon that. And so bearing that in mind, we should not be trying to take on the whole ownership of all the curriculum of analysis and approaches. This puts that puts the responsibility more in your students' hands if they're going to go beyond the AI course and explore analysis and approaches. And we have to be ready for our students to take ownership of that research. And so there's 5 main mathematical extended essay categories, right? There's the applicability of math, the beauty of math, proving math, history and development of a mathematical idea, and then the effective technology on mathematics. Can we still see my screen okay? I realized that I didn't check back in on that. Everybody seeing it okay?
Screen is clear.
Okay, excellent. So these are like the 5 traditional focuses of categories of mathematical extended essays. However, your students, what you'll find, the ones that are in the AI courses, they will be best to explore the following: the applicability of math, the beauty of math, and the effective mathematics on the effective technology on mathematics. Proving math, again, they are allowed to take an extended essay that goes that route. However, you'll oftentimes find that going through proving math, since proofs and induction of proofs is something that's a part of the analysis and approaches curriculum, it's not something that they're going to be as familiar with. And so there's going to be more work that they're taking on. They don't have necessarily the tool set that they learn in class to kind of cross apply. And so the heavy focus, though, of statistics and modeling in the AI course allows your students to do a lot more than with the applicability of math and the effective technology on mathematics and beauty of mathematics. And so using that content from your course, you can kind of encourage your students to go that way, especially if you're thinking it's a student that might have a more difficult time taking a mathematics extended essay that takes them into the other course in terms of content. So these resources that you can see on the next slide are all ones that are highly recommended for various stages of creating the extended essay. So JSTOR, which is, if you're a lot of IB schools have access to some collection of peer-reviewed articles. And so JSTOR is one that's popularly used, but students can oftentimes find through Google Scholar peer-reviewed articles and journals to be able to come up with some basis of research, highly credible research. But then there's also Math Olympiads is a good resource for your students to kind of get some idea generation. There's similar types of competitions within mathematics, but they oftentimes pose some of the open-ended beauty of mathematics and proving of mathematics problems that some students, especially your ones who enjoy math for the sake of math, might like to go through that resource with. And then Desmos is, for the beauty of mathematics, can be a really helpful tool to use, as well as GeoGebra, but across all sorts of modeling, of course, Desmos and GeoGebra are really useful resources for technology for your students to be able to generate from. Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel, or any sort of data compilation sheets, those can help your students a lot with the collection of massive amounts of research that they, with data that they could be having to navigate through and manipulate. And then Wolfram Alpha also helps your students, just in general, so they can solve problems for your students while also kind of teaching them the process that they need to be able to effectively algebraically manipulate different problems. And then to elevate the mathematical communication of your students, math typing resources like MathType, LaTeX, and LaTeX LT are really, really helpful for elevating some of the criteria that you'll see that we'll discuss later on for when it's assessed. But they're appropriate math tools for academic papers within mathematics, and your students should be encouraged to use those. And those are all accessible on the Padlet. So feel free to look at the access to them. They should all have at least a basic format that is free. Some of them, you have to upgrade to be able to get used to all of the functions. A quick note on the ethical guidelines for the math extended essay. So the IB and the subject reports for the extended essay, they always put out different things that are noted each year on different extended essays that have been submitted. For instance, they most recently made an announcement, I think it was about a month and a half ago, on the IB's website about how animal testing shouldn't be, done for your extended essay, essentially. And they kind of went into the official policies of the IB with that. But it's important to stay up to date with the IB announcement with that, especially with things with data privacy from your students. You need to understand your school's own policies for data collection, the country's policies in which you live for data collection for your students, and make sure that you're respecting those laws and that your students are respecting those laws when they're creating their extended essays, especially since so many of them like to collect primary data for statistical research. Your students should all primary data from collection from minors, that they respect the school laws, and that they always anonymize the surveys that they create. Formatting should be consistent with IB standards with a consistent choice. So if your students use MLA 9 across their English classes and are familiar with it, they can go ahead and use that on their extended essay, but they should be using a academic format that respects citations and bibliographies so that they are properly giving credit where it's due for the research they've done. That way they don't get smacked in the end on their grade for potential academic integrity violations. So they really, really need to make sure that they're following up with a works cited and proper citations within their essay, and that some really good resources online, that your school is using some resources online or whatever potential platforms that they use for checking academic integrity, such as Turnitin, that they are abiding by those citations within there, so that, again, they're not hit with an academic integrity violation and potentially putting their diploma in jeopardy. And then students are responsible for making sure that they cite all those sources from their extended essay throughout the entire thing, and that all theorems and formulas that your students use. This is one thing within mathematics that oftentimes goes forgotten, that students forget to cite their theorems and formulas. And if they're citing a formula that they learned in their school textbook, well, they should be citing that textbook. Or that they learned from some article online, of course, they need to be citing that. And so also the very most important thing across the mathematics extended essay is that this is on them. You are there to guide them. You are there to advise them on the process of the extended essay, but you are not the one writing it for them. We might find ourselves rather passionate for a certain research question, or that we have a lot of really good background information that we understand about it, and we can use that to help guide them, but we should not be the one taking control of the keyboard and writing that paper for them. There's editing we can do. We can help guide them to make sure, hey, this needs some adjustments, there's some errors here. But if your students aren't taking that advice, you can't be the one to implement the changes. They have to be the ones to do it themselves. Otherwise, you're doing it for them. And then we're talking more ethics violations, and which can put your whole school's program in jeopardy too. So we really, really need to make sure that we're not over-investing to the point of committing ethics and violations in this process. This is a slide that I was considering taking out, but I think it's worth mentioning because at the beginning of my own experience within oh yeah, sorry, I just see a question that popped up in the chat box. So citation method that is more appropriate for a math extended essay. I have found that APA is very helpful, especially because many of the students at my school tend to apply to go to some United States universities, and a lot of United States universities use APA format. So I have encouraged that, but some of them use MLA 9, and so long as they're appropriately citing, there's not one format that I would suggest over another. Good question. And so yeah, the considerations of a 5-year and 10-year rule. In certain content, in certain subject areas, they require that your data be either not older than 5 years, such as in economics, or not younger than 10 years, such as in history, right? It's not going to be a history subject if the articles that they're referring to are coming from topics that are within the last 10 years. So for mathematics, you might think that there would be something that is some sort of rule because of data collection, you want it to be fresh, but there's actually not quite any 5 to 10 year rule that is implemented. So you might hear this mentioned for other core subjects, but don't stress, it is not something that's applicable to the extended essay for math. Another topic is the idea of double dipping. So extended essay, one thing that we really need to make sure within the process for a mathematics extended essay is that it's not also appearing as your student's internal assessment. While the two are very distinct, your students might think that, oh, I was discussing this one topic of climate change using models with exponential functions, and then they did that on their internal assessment, and now on their extended essay they want to investigate logistic functions and how that affects to a climate change model. Not okay. That's very much using the same content, the same topic, and there could be way too much overlap. So the best practice is that if it's on the extended essay for math, it shouldn't be in your external assessments, with a very few exceptions, right? So technology, of course, can be reused. If your student's doing modeling through Desmos or GeoGebra or typing things up with LaTeX, they could do that on each. The general practice of that is not an issue. They could take a topic and reorient it in an entirely new direction. For instance, a student does an extended essay about graph theory applications for COVID vaccinations. They come up with a graph to map out hospital systems in their local area and do some research into the best routes between those different areas, and combining their understanding of different graph theory algorithms that they've learned in class or ones that they did some more research on. They create an extended essay for it. That's one extended essay. But their internal assessment, if they wanted to do it about modeling COVID cases, yeah, one's COVID vaccines, one's COVID cases, and there are entirely different orientations to it, that's okay. The general topic of COVID isn't necessarily one thing that like has to be mutually exclusive between the two. Like that's okay to repeat. But if you're not sure if the two things are totally different, for instance, your student does an extended, you know that a student has done an internal assessment on something in economics that you're not sure directly applies or not to the mathematics extended essay, it's best to steer them away from that topic. You don't want your student, again, to get hit with an academic integrity violation for potentially using content by double dipping between the two components of assessment that ends up jeopardizing either their grade on the extended essay or their diploma in general. And you have those students that you might really, really trust. Their intentions are academically honest. You don't want your student to accidentally stumble into double dipping with academic integrity violations. So it's best to steer them away from the ones that could potentially be double dipping. So if you're not sure, don't allow it. And that's kind of done through the vetting process that we'll talk about with the research questions at the beginning anyway. So quick differentiation and breakdown though between the internal assessment that we might have heard of or that you have taught potentially for the applications and interpretation course. There's no technical word limit for the internal assessment, but there is a word limit for the extended essay. And there is a recommendation for the page length for the internal assessment, excluding the appendices and title page. It's recommended to be between 12 to 20, but still it's a recommendation. It's not a strict rule. If your student on the extended essay writes 4,001 words, they can completely fail the extended essay. It cannot exceed 4,000 words. Fixed. And keep that in mind that data tables and equations for mathematics are not included in that 4,000 word count. But for the internal assessment, your internal assessment has to be designed to meet your level and your content. So if I teach the applications and interpretation high-level course at my school, my students have to do their IA on AIHL content. Their extended essay, however, if they wanted to do it within math, could be on any level of math at either course. So my student could be, even though they're in the AIHL class, they could be making an extended essay that's talking about analysis and approaches content that is at the SL level. And that could be perfectly okay. There's no rule that they have to stay at a specific level or content area for math for the extended SAB. That is. You could just apply your math for the internal assessment. However, the extended essay requires more research, the things you all were mentioning in the beginning, more analytical and critical thinking. And the internal assessment, in terms of time, you are recommended to not exceed 10 to 15 hours in class on IA related lessons, but there's no time expectation outside of class. So your student could put in a year's worth of work on the internal assessment or an hour's worth of work outside of class on the internal assessment, and that's it. But the extended essay, it is expected that your students are putting in over 40 hours of work on this. So there's a lot of breakdown of difference, but all in all, the internal assessment, the exploration it's an exploration of an idea in mathematics. However, the extended essay is a substantial piece of work that requires more formal research, that your students are required to cite academic journals or proper resources where they get their ideas from. So now onto the first stage of your extended essays and how your students create them. And that's the research question. So considering a mathematics topic and a research question, there's a checklist that I created for you all that's in the Padlet. And this is one resource that I would recommend that you download and you keep on hand for yourself for either for printing out to give to your students, but also for yourself to kind of understand the process of the various stages of creating the extended essay. But from that checklist, the research question has 3 questions in the very beginning, of that checklist. Make sure. These are the questions that you need to be asking when a student is submitting an idea for a research question in mathematics. Is there general personal interest in the topic? Is it mathematically focused? Is there room to develop your own mathematical arguments, models, or applications? And is it specific and not too broad? So, and this last question, which kind of almost contradicts the previous one, that it's not obvious in its answer, right? So you need to be specific, but it shouldn't be something that they kind of already know the answer to before actually doing any research about it. Otherwise, one, they're going to get bored. They're not going to be actually invested in that extended essay, but it's also one that, they're not going to get enough content written for it. So it can't be too obvious in its answer, but it also can't be very, very broad. They do need to be tangible and specific in their focus. And that design then of the research question needs to have an approach that's already in mind for how they're going to go about trying to answer it. And that it's not inherently something that they don't have any idea of some sort of any mathematical approach to begin answering that question. It might be some mathematical question that they really, really like, what is the, to what extent is the use of pi seen throughout our world? One that's way too broad, but the mathematics that they're thinking about using, what approach? Are we talking about using models of pi? Are we talking about using proofs of pi? There's not an approach that's directly in mind for that mathematical question. And so there's also, here's some recommendations that I have for your students that really want to score higher in the mathematics extended essay. Students should strive to either take the mathematics beyond their course level. So if they're HL, looking at stuff that goes beyond that HL level, but if they're an SL, trying to go beyond that SL level. Again, though, it's not necessarily that they score higher for HL content or SL content. It's just that they will naturally have more of, they will get more research out of it. They will be required to go beyond and actually ask the investigative questions that you want somebody to be asking when they're doing research for something that they're interested in. So trying to go beyond course level can help, not because it's, this math is so difficult, but because it will naturally get your students to investigate and actually create a research paper. And one thing that's also important to keep in mind is your students who are doing statistical analyses throughout the applications and interpretation course will learn a lot about different bivariate analyses and tests for independence and comparing, one variable versus another. It's best to try to make your data multivariate. So keeping the research question open to the idea that maybe there's going to be more than one variable that they're going through. Again, that's to try to achieve at a higher level. Your student could go and make an extended essay that's perfectly fine and passable, just talking about bivariate relationships. However, you're probably not going to get that much out of it. You're not going to get either enough math content or just enough research out of it. So try to encourage multivariate relationships to really elevate that level. So moving on, the research question. So students need to first pick a topic of interest when they're thinking about generating the research question. 2, read about what has already been written on it. 3, think about questions that occur to them about what they just wrote, about what they just read. So they need to go through each of these stages, but this is, again, before they are writing anything. This is all the brainstorming process. Then they need to evaluate their question. Again, I would recommend that you use, to evaluate those research questions, the checklist here, and that they are using this checklist when they're generating that next question, that those questions that occurred to them after doing a preliminary reading. And then think about potential outcomes. Thinking about that potential outcomes kind of goes in with the idea of keeping an approach in mind for the mathematics. And so here are some sentence starters for research questions that are oftentimes used within mathematics extended essays. So these would be also ones that could be helpful for your students to see when they're getting an introduction to research questions in general, but also if you are advising them, maybe giving them this list of sentence starters, because it could be very helpful for them. So keeping these starters in mind, the process here to generate research and brainstorming for an extended question and that extended essay checklist that we have in mind, we're going to do an activity in a minute, and I'm going to model for you what we're looking for. So there's three kind of three stages, thought processes to initially coming up with that research question. And one, it's understanding the topic that you're interested in. We have a student at our school who recently did one about tennis. And they were really, really interested in predicting tennis match outcomes because they were really passionate for the sport. And then they did some research about predicting tennis outcomes and came across a paper that was talking about mathematical modeling in hierarchical games with specific reference to tennis. They read the abstract on it, saw that it was talking about polynomials that they talked about in class, and that it had some discussion of binomial probabilities, and thought, okay, this could be a potential idea for me. They knew the topic in general, the broad scheme topic that they were interested in. Then they came up with a research question using some of those sentence starters that you saw on the previous page. They used the how accurate to start. And then they went about filling it in with some of the more, with reference to a specific paper that they did research on. And then they also had the mathematical ideas of what they were going to be doing prior to conducting more research and to flesh that out more. One critique that I would have had for this extended essay was that it was a bit too specific in their model from the outset. While they cited this paper and that showed like a little bit of credibility and ethos to their argumentation from the outset, it did narrow the scope of their paper a little bit too much. It would have potentially been better to broaden the discussion of their research question or the language of the research question to be able to explore other areas of related mathematics if they needed to. It also kind of limited their ability to show the critical thinking of why they were choosing that mathematical process to predict the outcomes that they were interested in achieving. So not a perfect one, but it was a strong one. This student was an AAHL student, so one that was in the analysis approaches course. And they just missed out on an opportunity to dig deeper through a more open-ended approach that could have potentially included matrices. Matrices are not in the analysis and approaches course like they are in the AI course. And so even though polynomial modeling was a fine way to be able to model the predicted outcomes, it was not necessarily the best way. I feel like matrices could have simplified the tool, and maybe he would have been able to extend the question and do a little bit more critical thinking about the best tools, mathematical tools, to create to answer his research question. So a little bit of a critique of it, but again, strong question to start in general. It just could have been. There's always improvements that our students can make. So we have these three stages of thinking: topic, research, question, approach. We have the extended essay checklist. We have our all of those different resources that we saw on the previous slides that are accessible. Oh, sorry, I'm going to show you all one more example. Completely forgot. This is one that I'm excited about because it's very applications and interpretation focused. The topic that we currently have somebody thinking about this at our school is the traveling and budgeting with graph theory. And their research question is, how reliably can various graph theory algorithms solve the traveling salesman problem when applied to an European interrail trip? There's a little bit of a typo there, but they are looking to apply ideas that they're learning in the HL AI course, but going beyond it and trying to look at some more algorithms to solve the traveling salesman problem that they found through some research papers online. Various types of algorithms that are letting them broadly explore this question, but still getting a specific approach to it which is graph theory algorithms. And they're also looking at various variables. They haven't narrowed the everything down exactly to a specific variable yet that they are looking to do, whether it be price or distance that they're trying to minimize throughout the traveling salesman problem. But they're kind of rehashing the research question a little bit as they go throughout it. But I think they're going to find more opportunity for exploration later on. So this is just another example. But now that you've seen these two examples, this is our first activity. In pairs, we're going to do some breakout rooms where you all are going to need to create your own copy of this. You can do this copy, a copy of this table in a Google document, or you could do it by hand and then take a picture later on. But you're going to need to upload it under activity 1, which we can see under our Padlet. You're going to have to upload a new post once you have it done with your partner right here. So you're going to create, again, a copy of this table. Take 10 minutes to study one that others have submitted. Sorry. This will load. There we go. You're going to take 10 minutes to study the ones that others submitted afterward. But we're going to first create this in pairs. So I think.
Should I start the breakout rooms, Jake?
That would be excellent. Yeah.
All right, I'll do that now.
All right. I like the approaches for the last one. It's quite, I like the multiple mathematical approaches with variance and Markov chain probabilities. Markov chains are one part of the content in this course that I think opens a lot of opportunities for really good exploration. And additionally, on the Padlet, I've already answered some of the first questions that I was able to get to. I didn't answer the last one, but go ahead and if you did leave a question for me on there, I got to the first 3. The last one, I'll just answer it verbally to you all. It says, is the Math SL Extended SAU private year a good exemplar? What is your evaluation of it? We'll get a little bit more into the evaluation of it later on because that is one of the activities, the last activities. But it does have to do with the mathematics prior to the introduction of the new course. So it was done in 2019. It did score well, and it should theoretically still score just as fine, given the fact that the math extended essay, even though there's new math courses, the extended essay is considered its own course and the requirements haven't changed. So the math extended essay criteria didn't change when the math courses changed. So the SL exemplar should still score well in 2022, just like it did in 2019. I hope that answers your question. And if we look at some response, go ahead and, I'm gonna have to refresh here. Go ahead and make sure you're leaving those comments right beneath where you can see the comments for the topics and research questions. If you find one to be especially strong. Right. So let's get moving on to the next phase then. I'm gonna quick refresh one more time, see if we have any positive comments or areas for potential growth. one thing about mathematical models that are used for disease spread is, whether that be this ARIMA model, whether that be the SIR model for discussing the spread of whatever it be, a disease, a bacteria. I'm seeing that group 3, you guys made this one. It can be modeling with specific disease spread models and algorithms is a type of extended essay and internal assessment that students oftentimes do that ends up actually limiting the amount of their creation of their own mathematics. So if you're going to base your own model, if you're going to base your model on a discussion of data, it's oftentimes turns into more of a report on something that's already been done mathematically, rather than them being able to report upon something, but then extend that into their own mathematical creation. So they just have, the language of it has to have more than necessarily just saying, how can I apply this to a disease spread, because it's oftentimes just inserting numbers into a formula. So there needs to be language when you're talking about disease spread modeling to allow the algorithm to be extended upon, which a lot of students have a lot of difficulty to do because, well, they're really, really rigorous algorithms normally, or one that allows it to be compared to other statistical models with statistical tests that they have in class, such as chi-square goodness of fit tests, and other statistical tests that they have to be able to see if a model is actually accurately predicting something. So there needs to be just some caution that's put into place for that. So I'm going to get back to the next slide that we have here. So, what comes after the research question is your students will have to actually begin the research. And if we have time, we're going to talk about that research at the end. But I think something that's more priority is you need to understand how these things are actually going to be graded, and the criteria for this. So the extended essay criteria starts off with your focus and method. Focus and method is graded out of 6 marks. And you have specific descriptors for this focus and method that fall under how your student would score for the level, why your student would score at a specific level for focus and method, the first criterion. So this is just about how your student is focusing on the research question and the methodology they used to be able to communicate effectively. The mathematical, basically the purpose of this has to be clear, and the math ideas have to be able to show transition going well between one to the next. These do have their own descriptors that will get a further breakdown that I'll explain a little bit later on. But the next criterion would be that it would be graded on along 6 marks as well, is also knowledge and understanding. Notice that out of the 24 marks that they get for the actual body of the extended essay, for the work in the actual paper of the extended essay, the first 2 criteria only can take up over half, up to half of those marks already. So mathematical knowledge, though, their knowing and understanding the math content specifically isn't necessarily the biggest part of this song. They don't need to necessarily be the geniuses in the math content. They have to be critical thinkers to really score top marks here. So again, knowledge and understanding for mathematics, they have to be able to show the steps of how they did the how they either created a model, solved an equation, did anything like that. And that theorems and proofs should be shown with a demonstration of the proof of by induction, typically, of those theorems, whenever possible, to be able to demonstrate a true knowledge and understanding of anything that they researched. However, again, the biggest criteria that goes into the math extended essays are critical thinking. So how are they thinking about this? How far did they research? How well was this research done? How well was the analysis shown that occurs in this extended essay, and the discussion and evaluation of this? So this is really the rigorous work of comparing potentially contradictory mathematical arguments that they could find through different journal articles that they found, valuing whether or not this mathematical process is worth pursuing versus another one based on the research that they actually conducted. Which really, going back to one of the questions that somebody put in there for the burning questions compared to the internal assessment, that's very, very different. The internal assessment is like a lot of their showing mathematical knowing and understanding. But this one, the bigger part is the critical thinking about that, which has to do more with that reflection process. So kind of another thing that puts the extended essay apart from the internal assessment and how we evaluate them. The deductive reasoning and how they break down their thoughts needs to be clear in terms of, again, citations of research, citations of methods that they found online, while demonstrating the mathematical understanding. But again, the mathematical understanding is not as much of the priority. And yeah, working from hypotheses, this whole process of critical thinking is really the biggest section of the assessment criteria. And then the last criteria, again, having to do with just the body of the paper, is only 4 marks, and it's just about presentation. So are the students using subheadings appropriately with mathematical displays that do not interrupt the flow of the essay while keeping it all concise? So that doing so with that, students should be able to earn full marks. This is the easiest criterion to score full marks in, because it's kind of, did you follow the instructions, and did they listen to your extended essay coordinator well, who's probably going to walk through this with them on how to format papers, their extended essay paper in usually your extended essay coordinator will have their own meeting for this in terms of the formatting, but also did they listen to your suggestions to be able to clean things up? If they do that, it's kind of just a box checking thing to make sure that they can get the full marks here. Critical thinking, though, again, this is where they get the most marks. Now, the last part, engagement. I say this is not actually a part of the paper because you don't get engagement credit from the paper. It comes from something called the RPPFs. And we'll discuss more about what those are later on, but it's a separate document, separate reflection process that the student does. And this really connects to their ATLs, so the approaches to learning that we referenced throughout the IB course. And this should be just a demonstration of their own development and growing mathematical thought processes throughout the course of the extended essay. So this is not them getting credit for showing within the paper that they're engaged. That's, again, an internal assessment measurement of engagement. The extended essay measures your engagement through the reflection process that is done in a separate set of documentation called the RPPFs, and they are not done. You don't get any credit for engagement from the paper. It has to be able to show. You have to show it in the reflection process. So your overall criteria marks, how you are graded, is done on a best fit basis. This is mostly applicable for criteria within the multiple strands A, B, and C. So what do I mean by that? If you go back to strands A, B, and C that you can see up here, you can see that there's several descriptors. So maybe a student is showing mathematical knowledge and understanding that is excellent, but their use of terminology and concepts is perhaps only done at an adequate level. Well, if you read the note here, if the topic's not related to math, it cannot math enough, then it cannot score above a 4 for that category. And by best fit analysis, they would stick at that 4 level, even though they're maybe getting mathematical knowledge and understanding that's excellent and showing that. So keep that in mind. Also, again, this one for criteria, this little note that you can see here, a topic not related to math enough cannot score above 4. The burning question that somebody left about a physics related mathematical extended essay, if their topic, in my answer, I said, if their topic is not showing enough of a mathematical approach, these are the criteria that they will suffer on. They won't score above 4 if they don't have it enough, if it's not framed sufficiently as a mathematical extended essay with mathematical approaches being done. So keep that in mind if your students talking about something that's related to another topic, another course or another subject area, that they really need to bring it back to math. Otherwise, these 2 criteria they'll have a tough time on. But again, going back to the best fit approach, if your student is scoring in multiple categories here, maybe their research is adequate, but the analysis is good, and wow, the discussion and evaluation is excellent. Usually that won't happen, such a disparate array, but you do have to consider the best fit approach. Like how has this developed over time to end up at? And if you were thinking about it, 4, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12 range, those 3 different categories being achieved for the different descriptors, you would probably end up in the 7 to 9 range based on best fit. So right now I'm going to go ahead and I just went through a lot of questions. I want to check if there are if anybody has any questions on these, the criteria that we have for there. There is, I don't know if this was posted to the chat bar. I can't see it right now. Let me see the chat bar.
I did.
Okay, excellent, good. So this breakdown of all the criteria, in addition to the descriptors, that can all be found at the link that's been posted there on the IB website. That specific link really will break down for you all how you would assess the extended essay through your own prediction of their grade on this, but also how the IB ends up assessing them. And it's worth keeping that open when you are looking at maybe the first draft of this to give feedback for your student. That way you are understanding the trajectory of their extended essay with that, and they are also getting the proper feedback for it. So again, this is not a fully fleshed out understanding of each one of these criteria, because there's so much to be able to pack in, but it is important to be able to have access to that specific link, that specific part of the website, in order to understand their own breakdown most effectively. And so let me check the time. Cool, we got plenty of time for this. We're going to go into the next activity. Assessing an exemplar. So there's an SL exemplar and the HL exemplar. Go ahead and you can go ahead and read through the SL exemplar, which has not been, you will not see annotations on that. You will see annotations on the HL exemplar for the justification for why it is an exemplar. And that should take 15 to 20 minutes for you all to read through it. Let's just do 15 minutes for that. Does that seem appropriate? Let me see. Let me think. Yeah, 15 minutes to read through the SL exemplar and then skim the HL one. And after that, we'll come back together to do another group session of breakout. All right, everybody. Thank you for your time to read through that. I'm going to refresh, see if we have any comments on how we scored it. All right, I don't see any comments. Were you guys able to see it? Activity 3?
Jake, we do discussed it. I just wanted to ask you, I'm not an EE examiner. Is there anything given special given for if an SL student doing EE in mathematics? Is it kind of lenient correction? How is it?
How is it graded, you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so if you're looking for your student to pass the extended essay, if they are making a properly formatted paper, they have a research question, and they generally are focused on it, they're gonna pass. It's rather difficult to fail the extended essay. But if your student's looking to do more than just pass, the extended essay, in terms of like mathematics, the mathematical knowing and understanding doesn't take up more than 6 marks. So your student doesn't necessarily have to be a math genius to score exceptionally well. It has to do with their critical thinking and their ability to do research. How well are they referencing their articles that they did, or their journal articles that they reference within there to answer and stay focused on their research question. And so in terms of how it's graded, we started off this presentation with a quick breakdown of the overall mathematics assessment, and over 50% of the mathematics extended essays that have been submitted to the IB have scored an A or a B together, which is...
No. I do understand whatever you have explained and everything. My question is there a special concession given for an SL student doing extended essay in mathematics?
No.
Okay.
All math extended essay students are seen the same. So this is not like an SL extended essay. It's not HL either. An HL student could focus entirely on SL content and do perfectly fine on the extended essay, and an SL student could do things that are completely SL content or not HL or go into HL. It doesn't really matter about bouncing between levels, and it doesn't even matter about staying in the content. They could be doing an analysis and approaches extended essay and be an applications and interpretation student.
Perfect. Thank you.
And now I see that, thank you, Mrs. Standard, for posting how you graded it for criterion D. Seems in order with formatting, but the argument probably isn't as clear as it should be. Okay, so yeah, the argumentation, that would be in a critique of actually criterion A, right? If they're not making sure that the argument is very clear. So I appreciate your comment there. I think Ms. Standard, you were in group. Mrs. Standard, you were in group 2. Did anybody in group 1 do criterion D?
I'm doing group 1. I think I will give a 4 or 5. It's quite clear the formatting and terminology used, but just that not much critical thinking.
Okay, so it was within the same level, right? You're saying then if it was a 4, you were probably a little more, you gave a little more credit. The presentation, you would say be full credit if it was 4 marks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. So you were within the same levels. Anybody do criterion C, the big criteria? Okay, now I see one popping up there. All right, Jakes, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Sorry, yeah, you pronounced it correctly.
Excellent.
That's my name.
All right, thanks for your comment there. I see 3 marks for research. It was limited to definition of each context section. Okay, and so the discussion and evaluation of that, very good. So there was no weighing of whether or not 2 things. So you really gave it some serious critique there. 3 marks out of 12. I mean, they can still, even if you're doing this extended essay and you're only able to reach limited amounts of critical thinking, your student can still pass, and not just pass. Your student could get maybe a C and still be eligible for some of those bonus points that they can get for their overall IB evaluation, even if they're still scoring at the 3 level. So most students, if they are evaluating the content, reflecting a little bit on it, can get at least beyond a little bit of the limitations of it. But yeah, I some serious critique there for the Criterion C. Anybody else have comments on Criterion C for this one? Again, I would really recommend, I can't emphasize enough. Can you all see my screen of the criteria here for the website? I don't know if I'm still presenting. Let me check. I don't think I am.
Jake, you're not presenting.
Yep, I'm gonna change that right now. Here we go. Yeah, so if you're looking at this website page where they break down the criteria for you, it's really important to make sure that you are reading the finer detail. What I showed you guys on the slides were basically the ideas from what the descriptors were, like what limited research looks like, but it breaks it more specifically down for you here on their website. The research is presented and it's limited in its application to support the argument. So making sure that you are reading those fine lines. If you're able to read through the web page, you don't have to, even going back to Mr. Stainard, you said you're not a mathematician. You don't have to be a mathematician to be able to advise the extended essay, because this information is right there for you on the website. None of this language here, as you can see for the assessment criteria, is saying anything very specific for outside of Criterion B for anything having to do with mathematics. All of this language is very general. So using this web page as a strong tool is essential for being a successful advisor in the process. So I'm going to quickly go through the last couple slides that we got here. We're not going to have time to go through what was called activity 2, because we had to move around the order. What I was saying to you all earlier is that the process for this all, right? You develop a strong research question, having gone through that checklist. Hopefully they're checking all the boxes to make sure that it's broad enough, while also, again, being focused with a specific mathematical approach. But then afterwards, they get into the whole process of mathematical research. And you can see on the checklist, again, it's on the Padlet for you, how your students come up with sources to cite within their paper. So the sources, do they directly contribute to the research question? Does this source answer the topic? Does it stay focused? Is this source reliable? Is it credible? Does the data from that source give a proper picture to be a reliable sample for the populations of the variables that they're looking into studying? So if your student is looking, we were talking about stock market data, somebody said for the research question. If somebody's looking at a stock market question about, I think they said Indonesia, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was Malaysia. I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me.
Indonesia, we did Indonesia.
Okay, Indonesia, excellent. So if you're talking about stock markets there, right, is the sample from an article that they got their data from, is it specifically stock market data based in Indonesia, or is it one that's based in maybe the US or London? Like if you were talking about different stock markets, you need to make sure that sample of the population in which they're speaking of is based on data for which they are actually looking to study. So it's making sure that they have a representative population, a representative sample is really important. Then primary and secondary sources, are they considering collecting their own data to extend upon the secondary sources that they're using? Do they have a variety of it? The literature review. So like within the extended essay process, when you're talking with your extended essay coordinators, a lot of them are going to encourage that students have a literature review section of the extended essay. It is not nearly as extensive for mathematics because they actually have things to do beyond just reporting on things that other people have done. They have to create their own mathematics, really. They have to extend upon it at the very least. So they're not going to be extensively discussing the literature, much like they would in, say, an economics or business paper. Students need to be able to demonstrate a clear understanding of the research that already exists about their question but in mathematics, again, that understanding can be conveyed without going into very extensive discussion of that literature. I hope that it's a balance, but your literature review for math in short, is going to be shorter than the other subject areas. And so when they're creating their research or conducting their research, they need to make sure they're creating an annotated bibliography. I'm going to leave these slides. You should be able to get access to this information after the session, but you need to make sure that within the annotated bibliography that each source has its citation, but then the annotated bibliography should be submitted before they actually get into creating their extended essay. And so basically your students, when they are researching their specific ideas and they come up with a article that they like, they need to justify the main focus and purpose of it and go into the background and credibility of their author, answering each of these questions in a paragraph explanation of what the source is prior to writing anything in the actual paper. That way we can be sure that these are credible and reliable resources for them to be using to answer their to answer the research question. And so the activity that we're going to go into was going to have to do with your creating your own annotated bibliography exemplar entry, but here's just one that you can see. This is, again, the student that, as my school is doing one on graph theory for the traveling salesman problem. They found an article and then they explained and answering each of those questions in a quick paragraph beneath. This is an example of one entry out of many for an annotated bibliography. And so the last thing I wanted to mention, RPPS. There were 5 criteria that are actually used to assess the extended essay. You all only talked about 4 that added up to the 28 marks, but you can get for the last part, engagement that you all saw, again, that's done here in the RPPFs. So this is done through different platforms or throughout journals that your students would be submitting, but it's 3 sessions of reflection. And so these are just paragraph responses where they discuss after each different stage of their extended essay creation, how they are learning, the discussion of their research, and they are demonstrating their own personal growth within here. The third RPPF is when you will be the most engaged because it is done through basically you're interviewing them on their extended essay in a Viva Voce session, which is basically just a video recorded session where you're asking questions to the student about their extended essay, much like one would defend the college thesis. They are having to defend their extended essay more or less, or discuss their thought processes in how they conducted their research. Finally, you will have to submit a document of comments. It's a brief summary of that where you attest to their reflection and engagement. It's not an evaluation of your student's character. You might not like them. You might really like them. You're not there to tell the people that the examiners how much you like them or don't like them. You're there to explain to them objectively how engaged you saw them in the research process. And then again, we've kind of already referenced the formatting, but a couple quick notes. Pages got to be numbered. No personal information should be anywhere. The file size can't exceed 10 megabytes. So you need to make sure that your students, if they have a lot of data and appendices, that it's being formatted in a way that's compressed and not too large to be able to upload to the IB platforms. And double spacing is really crucial. Your examiners are going to be annotating themselves. They need to be able to have space to be able to read through and appropriately annotate. So any final questions before we break out here? We got a couple minutes.
First question is, what is the actual score out of 28 for the test?
Oh, on that one.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I have that one with me right now. I'm sorry, I had it for the HL one, but I don't have it for the SL extended essay one right with me, because this one was provided to me. But I think, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have it on hand. Sorry. Any other questions?
Okay, no problem. Sometimes we have a dilemma between 4 to 5, 5 to 6. How do you evaluate, Jake? How do you take that call?
It's the best fit approach. So as you can see on the assessment criteria, so you can see, for instance, that when you're talking about critical thinking, for instance, if you're not sure if it's at a 6 level or a 5 level, well, you have 3 descriptors beneath there. How are the majority of the descriptors at a 6 level? Would you grade some of them at a 6 and some of them at a 4? I mean, at that point, okay, averages don't exist within the IB technically, right? But there is mathematically, we're going to do this in our heads, right? As math teachers, like, okay, my student got 664. We're looking at what that'd be 16 divided by 3, 5.33. That's probably going to be 5 range because we're rounding down, right? So just the average of the 3. But you're not really averaging. You could also kind of, maybe you think that this is a strong 6 for discussion evaluation and a strong 6 for analysis, but the research is just adequate. It's just a 4. Well, if they're strong 6s, that's a 5.33, but they're strong. You feel like it's really good. You could round that up to a 6. Maybe you feel, but again, that's left to your professional judgment. Again, reading through this here would be really, really helpful. Keeping that web page understood.
Okay, thanks, Jake.
My pleasure.
Jake, I think we have to wrap up the session.
All right.
All right. So I would like to thank you once again for the wonderful session you delivered today. I'm sure that everyone who joined in is taking away very useful insights. I would like to ask our audience to complete the survey, as we would love to hear feedback from you regarding this session so that we can accommodate your requests for our next event. We would also like to invite you to our next closing session, the role of the librarian in the extended essay today at 12:45 GMT. We would also like to take 15 minutes of your time for a Toddle platform walkthrough just right after that librarian session, whereby we're going to show you how Toddle can help you with the EE process at your school. It will take place at 1:30 GMT, and I'll be dropping the link in the chat box right now. Thank you again for joining us, everyone, and have a wonderful day.